Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by my good buddy, Pete Mohan, and the long-awaited return of the prodigal son, Eric Pond, just fresh back from the Olympics overseas. Welcome back, Eric.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be back.
So, here at the Real Chili Podcast, we are not hot take artists. As you will no doubt know, for those of you who listen closely, it's been nearly a week since Marquette's 96-73 blowout loss to Indiana in Bloomington, Indiana. And we took a little bit of time off to think. We took a little bit of time off to process. And so what we're going to kick off with today is we're going to dive into a little bit of what we saw in Bloomington, what we think this means for this Marquette team. And then towards the tail end of the pod, we're going to get a little bit into Presbyterian, but then focus on Kansas, which that matchup is coming up really quickly. So with the game at Indiana, this was a game, there was big hype for Marquette. There was hype for Marquette. We were ranked 24 in the AP preseason poll. And I don't think you can cut it any other way, Pete, but Marquette came out from the gates, from the start of that Indiana game, and laid an egg. And unfortunately, not only did it carry through to the end of the game, they didn't wake up, but this has become a bit of a pattern for Steve Wojciechowski teams just over the last several years in big games, in games against blue blood programs, and in games against, AP top 25 teams.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that shocked me the most is that we just seemed, scared by the moment. Didn't ever seem ready, didn't ever feel like we were on the attack. We were on the defensive even when we were playing on offense, it seemed. And it even showed, which people talk about free throws as kind of a psychological thing, or at least Buzz always did.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about an indicator in that first half. We missed our first 5 free throws, and if you're trying to get back in the game and you're trying to go to the rack and draw some fouls to gain some momentum, we failed at that in every possible way. So it was a scared effort in the first half, and we couldn't recover.
And so I was there at the game, pretty close to the court, and you could see some of what you were describing in their eyes, in the way they were acting on the court. But make no mistakes about it, this was a lit environment. This crowd was hype. It was packed almost to the rafters. It was a loud environment. Indiana fans were very aware that this was their first major test and first major game of the season. And Pete, you mentioned it, they didn't come out like they were attacking. But I think another piece of this is when your leader, maybe your unquestioned leader, Marcus Howard, starts the game with a handful of turnovers in the first 10 minutes, that sets the tone if there wasn't already a tone set. Now, arguably, the overall tone is set by the coach, and I think we need to get to that point pretty quickly here. But it was really, from just 4 minutes into the game was already over and we were digging ourselves out of a hole. And so, Eric, I know you watched a little bit of this game. Did you see it the same way? Did you see it as it was a lost cause from the first 4 minutes in, or did you think that we had a shot throughout the first half?
It never felt like we had a shot, honestly, from sitting, in my couch in Chicago. Indiana got out to that ridiculously hot start. I think they were at one point 19-4. I think we pulled it within something like 7 and then ended the half 47-34. It was brutal. I mean, it made the game pretty much over as soon as it began, or at least it had that feeling. Romeo Langford looked unstoppable at times getting to the rim.
Even Evan Fitzner looked unstoppable.
He did.
Yeah, he did. We had 14 turnovers on offense. I mean, I felt like every time I looked up, there was another live ball turnover by this team. And the worst thing about it is we just shriveled on defense again in a big game. We let them shoot something like 60%, 65%. And it really made those first two strong defensive efforts against Bethune-Cookman and the UMBC Retrievers look fluky and caused by the low-quality opponents we were playing. And that, to me, was just the most disheartening part of this whole scenario, getting blown out by you at Assembly Hall.
I totally agree. And just sitting there watching the turnovers, which if you look on KenPom, we are one of the worst teams in the country in turnover percentage. Granted, we're through 3 games. Still not great. Fast break points in the Indiana game, 21 points for Indiana, 5 points for Marquette. In that first half alone, I don't know how many they had in the first half, but I bet you it was a lot because it was just an onslaught in the first half. The second half didn't even matter, to be quite honest with you. Well, one of the more fascinating things to me is, why do Marquette teams, in particular, why do Steve Wojciechowski-led Marquette teams not seem to be ready for the moment? Now, that doesn't mean that if they're ready for the moment, they come out and win this game in Bloomington. That's not what this means. This means that they show up and they're there. They are locked in and they are ready to go. To me, this team was not ready to do that. If you look at Steve Wojciechowski's record just over the past 3 years, beginning with the 2016-2017 season, Marquette is 3-11 against AP top 25 teams. The average margin of loss against those teams is 11. So consistently, from the year that we made the NCAA tournament and lost to South Carolina until the loss against Indiana, we have not only have we lost to AP top 25 teams, but we've performed very poorly against them. And I think this is becoming part of a pattern for me, which needs to be corrected. Am I crazy, or is this becoming part of a pattern, or are we blowing this Indiana game out of proportion? Because it is early in the season.
It's early, Mike, but if you look at what Wojo said himself, he blamed himself. I don't think part of that or any of that was the classic like coach deflecting poor play on the player's part onto his back as the leader of the team and about leadership. It didn't come off like that. It came off as this is on me. The players were soft. The players, were not ready to come out in this environment. It was a real mistake-heavy game on the part of Marquette, and we just looked not ready for the moment, as you said. I think Wojo's exact quote, I have it pulled up here, said, again, this is all my responsibility. It's not on the players. It's my responsibility to get them to play better and tougher. And shit, man, like, I believe him. Like, you don't have to sell that quote hard. Like, it feels like Wojo really did not have this team ready to get up and play. And that's something that, if we want to be that ranked team, if we're going to be ranked for the first time in 5 years or however long it's been, we're going to go into some hostile environments where we are, we're the big game. We're the big game on a couple weeks slate. Right. We are going to be the Goliath that the David is going to try to take down, and we damn well better be ready so I think you're right, Mike. I think this is sort of on Wojo here, and your historical data there that you looked up and sort of those numbers you crunched, it tells the whole story to me.
I don't know if you can draw parallels to just say, is this a Marquette problem or is this a Wojo problem? First of all, because every year, every team is so differently comprised. I mean, again, we have a small sample size. We are 3-1. It's not like we've lost every game, but in this game, I just think that he didn't have the right people geared up for the right mindset. I would have liked to have seen him rely on certain guys exerting their aggressiveness on the game, because one of the things we talked about when we did the preview was, wow, I'm impressed with Ed Morrow and Theo Johns protecting the rim. We didn't have a block in the game. Yep. Where was that? I mean, shoot, just go. Why is he not going after the ball aggressively when we needed a turn in the momentum? Maybe it's a hard foul or something. I'm not saying be dirty or anything like that, but there was never anything preventing them from getting what they wanted at the rim. And I think that part of our defensive issues were centered around that. The tone was set by Langford at the rack, and that never faded during the game. And then on the other side, you have Marcus trying to do it all in, like, I don't remember exactly how many turnovers he had, but there was just poor ball handling moments where he tried to split double teams with behind the back dribbles and things like that. And it's bad basketball. There's plenty of guys on this team that know how to move the ball. Just get it moving. You're not Andrew Rousey, and this team isn't going to be an ISO predicated offense. It shouldn't be, because there's so many weapons. So I think that Marcus, and we can talk about what happened at the second half of the Presbyterian game down the line, but personally, I just don't think that Marcus is a person that we can have run our offense at least, a majority of the time, and for this offense to be successful.
Doesn't that go back to the original question, Mohan, though? Like, is it on Wojo, or is it, the nature of what this team is? To me, the effort all around on offense was really top heavy. It was Sam, Joey, and Marcus. I don't think anyone else had more than 6 points. I think Ben Steele said that in his article recap on the game. And just the lack of involvement all around in, running the point, getting guys involved, playing defense. It just wasn't an all-around team effort. To me, that's indicative of coaching issues.
I think maybe I'm going to be off base with this analogy here, but I think something that I've recognized when coaches are called players coaches, when you're an upperclassman, when you're one of the more senior players and one of the best players and more renowned, at least maybe in the start of the season, your coach is going to press you to do things that he thinks maybe you could be capable of having potential in, give you the keys to the ride, and, saying, Marcus, hey, if you want to be a point guard, I'm going to give you that shot. I'll let you run this offense and try and be, this all-American caliber player, and I'm going to give you that shot. I owe it to you. But if it doesn't work out, then we're going to need to find other ways of facilitating this offense. And it's funny because as a Pistons fan, there was all this talk over the summer about, like, Andre Drummond, he's been shooting three-pointers, and Dwayne Casey is saying he wants him to shoot three-pointers. And it was interesting to watch because the first few games of the Pistons season, he had that green light, and I want to say he ended up like 1 out of 12 or something in the first 4 games. And since then, it's totally been cut from his game. You barely ever see any three-pointer opportunities for Drummond anymore. So I think we may be seeing a similar thing here where it's just Wojo seeing, hey, is he capable of this? I'm going to give him the opportunity. If it's something that benefits the offense and can distort the defense in any way, we want him to have that in his arsenal. But I think that we've discovered that Marcus driving this offense as a ball-handling point guard isn't the way that we're going to have success.
This is maybe a futile exercise, but do you think this game is closer if we're not ranked?
Maybe.
I've thought about this a lot. I think this game is closer on a neutral court. Maybe I'm biased from having been there, but that atmosphere was so electric. That crowd was so ready for this game. I think if it's on a neutral court or if it's at Marquette, I think this is a totally different game. I'm not saying we win, but I think this is a totally different game.
Even if we made 3 or 4 of those free throws in the first half, the score would have felt different. We would have felt maybe more accomplished and not been daunted by the score. But going into halftime, what was it, down 13 at half?
Yeah, I think it was 13 because I remember we were texting and you said we need to be down by no more than 14, and we got it to like 11 at some point.
But they just kept answering, man.
Mohan, before we move on to Kansas and Eric too, you mentioned this point about Langford setting the tone, and I think he definitely did that. And by the way, holy shit, Bubbles, you were right. This kid is incredible. Yeah. Going to have a great career in the league. I mean, don't want to take away anything from Indiana. They have a lot of talent. I think they had a particularly strong night.
All of their role players had good games.
Yeah, Finney, Durham, like you go down the list, they had really strong games.
They all had great games.
And so this is one of those cases where Marquette looks worse than we actually are. Indiana looks better than they actually are. Since the Marquette lost to Indiana, Indiana lost at Arkansas.
I still think Indiana's a better team than us. I mean, right
sure.
now, and maybe even by the end of the season as well. They're clearly not a bad team.
Clearly not a bad team. But I think there is a little bit of push because this is so early in the season. And I think one of the key things to keep in mind is this is a young team. We still need to figure out how the pieces are putting together, but that doesn't mean we don't hold the coaching staff accountable because it's their job to put it together. And I think there's no better way to get this stink off of you, to get this this 20-plus point loss stink off of you, than by turning around almost immediately in playing Kansas, the number 2 ranked team in the country. Now, Mohan, I know you want to talk a little bit about Presbyterian because I think there are some important things in there. So let's get to that quickly and then get on to Kansas because I think this is an opportunity, not an opportunity to Marquette's going to win. I would never say that against this team, even though it is on a neutral court. But an opportunity to maybe start to put the pieces together to be a more competitive team against highly competitive talent.
Well, yeah, before we get into Kansas, I just think that we need to mention what happened in the Presbyterian game, and that was they basically hung with us the whole first half, and neither team really played great offense. It was a defensive struggle, but we couldn't get the ball to drop at all. And then, to make matters worse, second half, Presbyterian makes their run. They hit 3 threes in a row. I think they're up 5 at one point, and Marquette was really against the ropes. The 5-serve was quiet as hell, and then Marquette makes their run. As Anonymous Eagle was pushing so strongly online during the week, I think we had a 37-12 run to finish the game. And
he was excited about that run?
No, he was saying
against the Blue Hose?
The game was tied to that point. He said it was a Marquette won 37-12 was his headline. So, I don't know. Anyways, the point is that we continue to run our offense through Marcus. And then something happened, something magical, something so beautiful. Joseph Chartouni hit an open 3-pointer.
And it didn't hit the backboard, right?
Well, he missed his first one, I believe. And then, but his second shot, he even hesitated, and I was like, "Oh god, this one is not even going to make it to the rim."
I saw that. Folks, go look in the highlight. You can see on that first one, it's almost a double pump.
He was so scared. Yeah. It was like a kid. It was like a kid on a high dive.
There must have just been choirs singing from Jesu.
Oh my god, we almost got a technical because the bench poured onto the court as if it was a last minute shot. So Chartouni breaks the seal, one might say. Jeez. And then he hits splashes 2 more open shots. And like the Red Sea parting, all of a sudden there was lanes to operate on the offense. To get to the hoop, there was passing lanes open. Guys had a half a second longer to get their shot off from the 3-point line, and the offense just took off. The other thing was, when this was happening, this wasn't Marcus running the show. He was doing his best job as an off-ball shooter. And not to, we can't forget Joey, who had another really strong game. And when the offense is moving through him in the mid-post, we look a lot better as well. So I think, first of all, the key was Chartouni got the monkey off his back. He now feels like he's a participant in the offense. Had a great second half against Presbyterian, and I think that he's finally kind of fleshing out his role on the team. And then to be able to find that balance of Joey, Marcus, and Chartouni distributing the ball between those three, I think that the offense it's a lot better. So to get into Kansas, I think we have a chance to keep it close because the offense will be more open if we continue to play that way.
So, Eric, based off what Mohan said, and I agree, right? I think one of the impediments is Marcus isn't a natural 1. No. He turns the ball over too much. It's just not a perfect fit for him. So get Chartouni. When Chartouni can get his wheels humming and get playing at the 1, put Marcus at the 2, and that could open things up. As Mohan said, as well as Chartouni hitting the three-point shot. Granted, he's not a great career three-point shooter. The best he's ever shot in a given season is 38.2%, and that was his sophomore year.
That would be a dream if he shot 38%.
That would be a dream. So, that's not bad. But, Eric, do you agree with what Pete is saying? And if you do, could you see a lineup where Chartouni's starting at the 1? You know, if we're going with the traditional positions, Chartouni's at the 1, Marcus is at the 2, Sam is at the 3, or Bailey's at the 3, or maybe we're busy for Bailey. What do you think about how that looks?
Yes, I would say yes. I think the point guard generally as a position, you know, has evolved in two different ways. One is the traditional point guard, which I think Chartouni falls really well into. One is that scoring guard, really like score first, shoot first position. And to me, there's no better spot for Marcus Howard. It's sort of how, if you look at what Dennis Smith Jr. has done in the NBA this year and last year, again, he's sort of evolved in that way where maybe not the traditional point guard he came in and billed as, but sort of that scoring guard model. I think
like Devin Booker, I would say, is interesting.
Devin Booker's an interesting comp. Yeah, the height differential is a little bit different there, but a good comp as far as, you know, position is concerned. I don't think he's ever going to be the Steph Curry where he can facilitate, run the point, be that sort of floor general, and also have that deadly shooting that he has, and, you know, the drive to the rim sort of creativity, that Kyrie Irving type creativity that sometimes Marcus flashes.
I mean, Marcus even has trouble doing entry passes to the post sometimes.
Yep. So if you have a veteran like Chartouni, a guy who was billed coming in as that sort of smart, accomplished player, who maybe isn't a dead-eye shooter, but is just a really smart guy to run the floor for us. You know, trying to think of a comp in the NBA, I don't know. It sort of escapes me, but, you know, if he's a Jeff Teague type, again, not really a scoring guard, but someone who's going to run the floor for us, I think that's a great lineup. I think that's something that could be really important. And again, I could
He's a poor man's Lonzo Ball.
There you go. Chartouni is a poor man's Lonzo Ball. I love it.
For me, it's just what if you're on offense, you need to bend the defense in a certain way. You need to distort it because that's what creates open shots and open opportunities. Marcus, the defense is welcoming him into a one-on-one game. They want him to do that. That's what's drawn him into the turnovers because he just doesn't have the game to beat a guy consistently one-on-one or run the pick and roll. So think of ways that we can move the defense. Sam in a mismatch in the post. Theo, if he's sealed under the hoop. Maybe he's not taking that post shot every time, but if he's deep, a second guy is going to come and he'll be able to kick. So we just need to focus on offense and doing things that shift the defense and make them have to concern themselves with a certain player and send double teams and things like that.
I think if Wojo and the staff can find a way to make Marcus more of a Rip Hamilton, Detroit Pistons style of player where he's running off screens around the baseline, whipping around the three-point line.
Make them chase him.
Make them chase him. And they were doing a little bit of that in the Indiana game, but Marcus had the ball in his hand way too much for that. So for those who don't know Rip Hamilton, right, just running off screens constantly, never stopping to the point where you're in the second half and your defender is tired as shit and Marcus has wide open three-point looks. So that could be a mold to go for. To sum it up, Indiana kicked the shit out of us. I think the favorite headline that we saw was Indiana forcibly ejects Marquette into the stratosphere. It was a terrible loss. That said, early in the season, there is still time left to put this together. The defense was very disappointing. Let's see where it goes from here. Now, moving on to Kansas. On Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central on ESPN2, Marquette will face off against the number 2 Ken Pom ranked team, the Kansas Jayhawks. This is at a neutral site location. Pete Mohan, I believe it's at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. You're going to be there, right?
Yes, I'm going to be in the house that Spencer Dinwiddie built.
How dare you sully Karis LeVert's name like that?
I mean, I'll be in the house that Mikhail Prokhorov laundered money through.
With the few minutes we have left here, I want to talk about how we approach this game. This is not a game I'm expecting Marquette to win, but what I do want to see out of this Marquette team is I want to see progress towards the steps that we've talked about here. I want to see better distribution of the ball in our offense along the lines that make more sense, that are conducive to success for what we think could work, right? Let's not have Marcus handle the ball more. Let's get Joey as much work as we possibly can, because clearly that kid is talented. On defense, let's wake the fuck up. We were good those 2 games. We showed some intensity, and then we throttled it back. That's what I want to see. We're not going to – I don't expect an outright victory, but a victory, if we can keep it within 6 points of a final score, I will consider that a massive victory.
Yeah, that is obviously a great outcome for us. Unfortunately, at this point, coming off the Indiana loss and sort of the Presbyterian first half, I think a lot of us expect sort of less than stellar results coming from this team. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, this is the preseason number 1 team. They were just surpassed by Duke because Zion Williamson is playing in a different galaxy right now. Kansas, I mean, my God, LeGerald Vick is playing absolutely out of his mind. He scored 33 points, had 9 boards in their win over Louisiana. He's 6'5", senior from Memphis. Bill Self called him the hottest player in the country, and I think he believes it. I'll tell you what, Marquette does not have the hottest player in the country right now, so puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage right off the bat. Beyond that, he's hit 15 of 23s over his last 2 games. And then they're just – he
was going to go pro, right? He was going to go pro.
I think
then,
so. Came back, yeah.
Didn't sign an agent, came back.
Yep. And then all around, I mean, there's just matchup problems all over the floor for us, which is worrisome if we're actually going to dig into breaking this game down. Like, I'm not sure it's quite worth it. I think it's more worth it to talk about, things we'd like to see from Marquette as indicators of progress. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. It's a freshman McDonald's All-American, David McCormick. He's 6'10", 265 from Oak Hill. Like, he could carve us up. Azubuike is averaging 19. Quentin Grimes is a hell of a player. Dedrick Lawson, boy, like if
our interior defense is like it was against Indiana, we'll probably lose by 30.
Which is the big fear, I think. If we are able to really leverage and really in a smart way, play Theo John, Ed Morrow, Helt, to sort of clog the lane on these guys and really match up well against their big men and their size. Yeah, maybe we pull it within 10 at the end of the game, and maybe we pull within that. And that's a huge victory, I think, from a post-game synopsis scenario, from a post-mortem. Like, I'd love to come on Saturday or Sunday, belly full of leftover turkey sammies and talk through some real actual moral victories from that game. But bros, I don't think we're anticipating an actual victory on the scoreboard at this point. But
I love how you say "at this point" as if something is going to change in the next 48 to 72 hours. It's going to change. Yeah. But I couldn't agree more.
Water under the floor slippery, game's off.
Right, yeah. Game's canceled.
Well, I think there's a few things at play here. I think hopefully we have at least corrected, the mental aspect of our interior defense.
We'll know within the first 4 minutes of whether this team is there to play.
I mean, look,
yes.
They are extremely talented in the front court. And even if Theo and Ed Morrow both play really good games, they're probably going to be scoring 40 to 50 points in the paint or something like that. So we need to temper our expectations for how well their offensive front court performs. I think the second thing is, can we integrate one more guy into the offense? We saw Chartouni have his breakout game in the second half against Presbyterian. Is there another guy who just has a game and, feels comfortable in the offense. We haven't seen it from Bailey. We haven't seen Bailey get involved really in offense. Jamal Cain, he's hit a couple shots here and there, but he hasn't really had that game where he's got hot. And, it seems like every time Morrow and Theo get the ball in the post, they're turning the ball over. Can one of those guys have a game? So I'm interested to see how we start to integrate these additional pieces and get people going. Sakar, I texted you guys like crazy about it during the Indiana game.
Yep.
Why isn't he drive? He waited till there was 4 minutes left in the game to drive the ball to the hoop. Why?
Yeah, that sweet dunk, which got a huge eye roll groan from the crowd. Definitely.
I mean, if Langford's going to be beating you to the rack all game, why are you not trying to give him a taste of his own medicine on the other end?
Fair.
Yeah. It was mind-boggling for me, and we need to let Sakar go to the hoop and draw fouls, because without a cutter, it's just a really missing element in this offense. So for me, it's can we improve our defense on the interior, and can we start to integrate additional guys in the offense, just add dimensions to it and make us more dangerous? But since I'm going to be there, I'm trying to remain optimistic that something good is going to happen. I'm trying to not tell myself we're going to lose by 30.
Dinner's going to be really good afterwards, Mohan. Just go to your favorite spot in Brooklyn, and that's something to look forward to.
I think one thing we can all agree on is that Marquette's offense right now is the equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. It's you're popping all these different tools out. Some of them you don't know how they work. Some of them don't work as well as they should. And I think that's the stage Marquette's offense is in right now. We'll see how that pieces together. The defense, it's no surprise where the defense is. We thought it was going to be better. Let's see if they can fix it. Make no mistakes about it. The time between the Indiana game and this podcast maybe has taken some of the vitriol and edge off from our voices.
But we're pissed.
What we saw on the court was not acceptable for Marquette standards, and that needs to be turned around in relatively short order. We're not expecting a win against Kansas. This team needs to show us something, that there's still a little bit of life left. I think there is some promise, but we'll have to see. Fellas, I think that's going to do it for us here tonight on the Real Chili Podcast. Any final shout-outs, mentions, words from either of you?
Well, my parents' dog had its balls removed in the past week. So, in honor of Astro, let's play like we never want to have our balls cut off.
Yeah.
Play like we want to hold on to that manhood and don't let Kansas neuter us.
I think we can all get behind that. I also want to
do it for Astro.
Want to give a big shout out and props to our boy Jimmy Butler. Big deal. Big ups going to the Sixers. Looks like he fits. That's so exciting. I don't know if you guys saw the other night. Played the Jazz and our other
not the Blues. He was playing
favorite contemporaneous athlete Jay Crowder. So real exciting stuff there. If we can only channel some of that Jimmy energy and just craziness on the court, we'll be fine. All
right, folks. We hope from each of us here at the Real Chili Podcast, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy the food. Enjoy your leftovers. Be sure to spend a little bit of your time getting out there and giving back to others. Coming up on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, Marquette playing Kansas in New York. Should be a fun one for at least a little while. We'll see how the rest of it works out from there. Signing off for Eric Pond and Pete Mohan, for the rest of the fellas here at the Real Chili Podcast, I'm your host, Mike Lavender. We'll talk to you next time.